unfortunate events.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of the series Unfortunate Events podcast brought to you by who? It's me, MeMeCherry. And I know I say this way often, and you know what? It's because many dreams are coming true even during a pandemic. This one is a dream. Drag performer, business mogul, DragCon icon, living meme, Free Britney ambassador, winner of every season of Drag Race. Does she look too? It's Bible Girl!
Thanks for having me, Mimi. It's been a long time coming, and wow, quite the superlatives you've given me. Thank you so much.
I'm known for my intros and my games. Everything else in between, well, you know.
I know a lot more about you than you think, Queen. I'm here for it.
This really is a dream. I was even telling my mom this morning, I was like, oh my gosh, I have Bible Girl. It's such a dream come true. Every year at DragCon, we would try to pull it together, but it just wouldn't come together. And you know what? It didn't, because this needed to be how it happened.
I'm about the serendipity angle myself. I agree with you. DragCon is definitely its own hurricane of craziness and just nonstop moving parts that I think to get something that you would be happy with and to be of quality, I think we needed to bide our time and make it come to fruition the right way. I agree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And honorable mention in my intros. And I think when I was reading up, because I know you, I know about you, but of course I do a little pre-research just for the sake of refreshing. And there was an article that said, Bible Girl, the Kim Kardashian West of drag. And I'm pretty sure it's because of my background, which was Bible Girl's Big Apple.
It was. What a time. What an era, right? It's such an interesting, even though I don't necessarily consider myself like an arbiter or like a full maverick in the industry, but I feel like looking at this and you being someone who's kind of seen the growth trajectory and just kind of the evolution of the business, looking at that gives me such a strange kickback to 2016. It's so funny. It's a good feeling, very nostalgic in its own right.
It was between this or the Pay Bible Girl belt.
Oh my God. And again, talk about what a time. The fact that was almost 3 years ago already blows my mind.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. So let's start with, I want to know about Baby Bible. And you take that as whether when you were growing up, as a kid or your beginnings as a drag performer. I just want to know Baby Bible. Tell me a little bit about Baby Bible.
Sure. Well, pre-drag, baby me was just always kind of like a more weirdo kind of kid in the classroom, always noted as a social butterfly in the parent-teacher conferences, though. So that was always like the one big complaint from teachers about me, is that I didn't know to stop talking, which I thought was funny, because I think that about myself now as an adult. So I think that's a very funny, parallel journey that I've taken. But aside from that, I was always kind of like the artistic, nerdy kid, and I think without having the capacity to label it as such when I was younger, it allowed me to kind of really play around in whatever my interests might have been at the time, which have still definitely grown with me. And I think that's because certain things, I think this really off the top of my head, like a Mario or Zelda, little inspirations like that have also grown in time with me. So I've been able to kind of carry that in a way. And then I think along with growing with different IPs like that, which have really been such a core of inspiration for me and imagination for me, I think I've been also able to just kind of pick up skill sets, whether that's just more artistically inclined things, whether it's drawing, painting, graphic manipulation, graphic design, kind of anything under that umbrella. And that's been stuff that has kind of proven to be outlets for me when I didn't necessarily have social life growing up. And that was just because of that was just like a culmination of different factors. My parents were super overprotective rather, when it came to me doing social activities as a teenager. And looking back, obviously it's understandable.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a point of contention growing up. So my outlets otherwise would go to things such as like pop culture, video games, kind of like just the young internet culture world that was really starting to bubble up in like the mid 2000s, right? So that was kind of where my dreamscape and my imaginationscape really started to take root as like an adolescent, and that's where I was able to pull a lot of my inspirations or reference a lot of my inspirations or cite them even back onto the internet at that point. And that's kind of where I've been able to now, fast forward to my drag, be able to still kind of have those points of being still exist.
You're very referential, but you're very referential in your own way that if you don't know the reference, you won't catch the reference.
Yeah,
it's
I
not
like
a copy paste. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. I really appreciate it. That's something like I never think I reinvent the wheel per se, but I always I like to think that I have my own point of view. And I think that's something that I try to make even more so more recently than ever, as consistently noticeable or recognizable as possible, especially while we're in a digital landscape. I feel like because the industry at large has really, and this was a learning curve for me this year in and of itself, right? Where I think the pandemic created this, for lack of a better term, equalizer of the playing field of the industry. And so it was just kind of like, okay, so it feels like everything is back to square one, bare bones. How do I build from the ground up off of what I've established, but is now getting funneled into what will be an oversaturated, then that's not a bad thing, digital landscape. You know, I'm always more the merrier in terms of drag, but you can't not acknowledge the fact that there will be some kind of balancing act of figuring out how you're going to stay afloat. So now to wrap this all back together, it's been a going back to my initial inspirations and references and things that made me who I am today over the past 27 years, you know, and trying to figure out how I can retranslate that into a digital space on a consistent level because of how long term we're going to be in this. So it's been an interesting, like, full circle moment for me to kind of actually have to dig back deep into like what has made me who I am now. So it's a very perfectly timed question.
Yes. Well, who the fuck is Bible Girl? But actually, but tell me about the name. Like, I really want to know where did Bible Girl as a name and a concept come from for you?
So baseline, it was because, again, my social life predominantly was like on MySpace or different forums like that.
Yes.
Right? So it was during the scene era, and it was me trying to find where I fit in. So like I wasn't like an actively practicing scene kid, but my God, did I do a good facade on MySpace, right? So like that's kind of where I was. So there were the different like edgelord type of usernames where it was like just really trying to be dark, and so like that's definitely a point of reference for this name. Where you know, I've definitely taken on the name of just Bible Girl for lesser what's the right syllable sake. But you know, but for a username handle, it still fits, I think, in a marketing aspect because it does harken back to that time. For a more like higher brow avant-garde explanation, I think, you know, because I try to be more of like a sponge to pop culture. I think of someone who has just like, you know, there are those characters or those archetypes like Cher or Madonna, or, you know, even at this point to Britney or Christina. You can just say a name, one name, first name, and people know it. And I thought that for Madonna, being like a very religious type of character rooted name, even though it is her name, I felt like Bible Girl was also a funny parallel that was like annoyingly direct and on the nose, but also fit the username thing. So like it's layered and it's weird, but it makes sense for me, I feel like. And it's the only thing that ever felt comfortable for me to be recognized as, because I would joke around with friends when I was starting and be like, well, because I'm kind of taking from where I was a club promoter and I'm making fun of behaviors that I see in club culture, do I want to just be called like Stacy? Do I want to be like Jessica? You know, like trying to figure it out. And it just never felt right. So then
I could have never have seen you as a Jessica or a Stacy.
No, and it's no shade to anyone who do have those names, obviously. It just didn't fit for me. And like, it's funny now with people who just refer to me as Bible, like full stop.
Yes, just Bible.
Like, all right, I think it's perfect.
Well, your name gets said a lot on the Kardashians, so hey.
Yeah, it's free promo.
Well, speaking of, I joke and I don't joke, but when I say that you're a living meme, you are. And I think you have touched on it so far. So I don't want to like redig the question of like,
Sure.
well, why are you so into memes? Well, because you're quirky, you're artistic, you lived your life on the net, you were there in that time, but you
Mhm.
also over the time leaned into a very specific aesthetic of memes. For a while you were into like this oversaturated, like, what does it even mean?
The
Like,
deep
what
fried
do
memes.
tell me, give me
Yeah.
like, for the boomer in me, explain to me the aesthetic inspiration of that oversaturated fried meme.
Okay, so the idea of a fried meme comes from something that's actually a real thing that happens when you share something too many times, you screenshot it too many times, right? The quality just gets denigrated so drastically, and you do it over and over and over again. And that is a product of something that's getting passed around and shared a lot, right? So when you do it yourself, by throwing it into an app and like upping the structure like 5,000 times, it's really just like taking the piss out of and leaning into the idea that, oh, this thing has just been to hell and back, and like
Even
it
though
has
it's a
just been
reference from yesterday.
yeah, no, and it's just like there's something about it, like bastardizing a meme like that, that really just like it's such an emphasis and like a really like high punch and like punctuation to it that just like is really funny to me. It's like another language, and for whatever reason, it's something that I am particularly fluent in.
The camera can't pick it up, but I definitely did a Bible read nose.
Oh no, I do see it. No, yeah, I love a good blush moment. You know, I love a blush. Never met one I didn't like. That's very true.
And I even went in a little extra. I was like, nope, we're gonna go in extra today.
Never too much, ever.
Well, so you've gone from username 666 to a one person name to just a name that can be recognized anywhere. And I think for a lot of us, when we hear Bible or BibleGirl specifically, we think of business mogul, dragqueenmerch.com. Tell me a little bit about that, stepping off of that cliff, making that choice to do that journey. I, for a long time, appreciated that you were giving, it's like the misfit playground where they can at least
Yeah.
make a little bit of coin back for, all the joy that they spread in the world. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so going back to when you introed me about DragCon, DragCon was the main catalyst which did start the gears moving for creating something bigger than a platform just for myself, right? And because DragCon year one when I went, it was before DQM even existed, but it was right after I had started doing my own production of my own merchandise, just like for shits and giggles. And I'm of the mindset of like you have to make people think you're the shit, yada, so on and so on. So I went in with a hope and a prayer, and it was based off of my girlfriend Lindsay being like, "Hey, I think you should do this," because I was like, maybe I'll sit this out. But she was like, "No, I think it'd be good for you." So I took the jump, flew out, set up a booth, had no actual like booth experience, or trade show experience outside of my dad's like own work where I could like go and see one. But like it was, it's different when you're on the other side. So it
Yeah.
was just
And
like
at least you had that much of a reference to it too, because trade
that's
shows,
true.
that's a very specific kind of world. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So I definitely there was a learning curve in and of itself of just like getting a booth established and looking right when it was just kind of bare bones and like I didn't have a business behind me at that. It was just like a lot. It was very grassroots.
Yeah.
But I had like 6 different t-shirt designs that I had just like done on my own. And I think just by luck, based on where I was placed, like in a corner that happened to also be like a corral for where like because that was the year season 7 was airing. Yeah, that was when Trixie and Katya's line was kind of just wrapping around the whole room. So
That year.
yeah, that year. And I kind of got this like reservoir in the corner of people who didn't necessarily know me or know anything about me, and would see like my actual interactions with people who were stoked to come and see me, that was surreal because it was like my first real like meet and greet or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just really interesting. So I was able to in one day sell out of all of my inventory, which is totally unexpected because I definitely thought I had brought enough for the entire weekend, right? And so when it was all said and done, and like day two culminated in just me like socializing with people, it was eye opening in regards to the fact that there was a market, but there was so much more beyond that, and there was a story to tell. There were different people to uplift. It wasn't about my own enrichment, and so that was something that when I came home, that was shortly after I had started dating my boyfriend, who I'm still with, Chris.
Oh,
And when I had come home, I had told him, then my dad, I was like, you guys, I think there's something
there's something
bigger
here. Yeah.
here. Yeah. And like, because at that point I had like maybe ballpark like 8,000 followers on Instagram and like was able to pull that off. Right. I was like, okay, something's there. There. So we just really kind of hunkered down and, it stayed fairly grassroots for the first year. And because timing is really kind of everything. I started asking people that I would work with locally in New York, and they were kind of like the first 5 to 7 faces that I had on the website. Trixie was our first Rue girl because she was someone that I had met right before her cast announcement when I was in my first out of town gig in Chicago after I just first met
Yeah.
Pearl. It's like a lot of weird
Yeah.
timing things that started to just align. And, this journey has definitely been a very interesting but positively interesting experience with a lot of learning curves and a lot of introspective learning lessons as well. And it's something that I'm super grateful for. I know Chris is super grateful for because we're both on annual salary from our own straight from the ground up business, which, is really surreal to be able to say. And we've both had been working office jobs and balancing this leading up to moving to LA as well. And there was a point where it was like, are we able to make this happen full time? Is
Yeah.
it in the cards? And we just had to. There was one day where I was like, all right, we're going full throttle. I left my
Yeah.
graphic design job, and he was wrapping up some of his marketing job stuff, which he had come to New York for from Salt Lake, and we just figured it out. And then it was his idea
Jumped
to
off the
come to LA. Yeah.
cliff.
And it was his idea to come to LA. And I had gotten very comfortable with what I call like the idea of local celebrity, which is just like, you know who you know, you've
Yeah.
got your people, you've got your
Yeah.
work, your line of work. It's good. Everything's good. Why rock the boat? But to his credit, he was always pointing out I was working a lot more out west. And I think that was something that he noted was indicative of the fact that it's not that this is the land of milk and honey per se, but there was more. We
The
could
market
still
dictates, and
attain.
the market was
Yeah,
dictating you to go in that direction.
exactly. And so then being out here also really allowed us to be more boots on the ground and have people on the local level who we've become very good friends with understand who we are beyond just the business. And I think that in and of itself has also enriched the business because
Yeah.
people have understood our commitment to community, which is something that we've really tried to strive for from the beginning.
Do you have a mission statement? And if you don't, what would you say it would be?
My mission statement is that, much like the drag community, in and of itself, this business is meant to reflect the industry, and it's meant to show and output the diverse level of people and talent that culminate what the drag industry is. And without people who aren't on Drag Race, who we also simultaneously represent, we wouldn't have this type of an industry to begin with, let alone something like Drag Race.
Exactly.
So I think I look at it as something that's a very never-ending circle. That's a cycle that is always going to kind of have to feed itself.
Like the
Exactly, it's an
infinity loop.
infinity loop,
Yeah.
1,000%. And
Yeah.
that's something where with DQM we've also tried to. It's always a balancing act and figuring out what's the most fair. How do we make sure that we're also not inundating ourselves with overflow work where we're not going to necessarily see sales? And so we've tried to calibrate and figure out what's the best course of action. And to me, I'm always thinking keep the doors open. And
Yeah.
so we had a point in time where we had prerequisites for like X amount of followers, but I've fully walked that back because times change.
Yeah.
That Instagram following number, I mean, speaking from experience, this pandemic alone, I went from 130K and now I'm sitting at 125K and my engagement is shit. It means nothing. So at the end, it also it starts to go into gatekeeping territory, which is something that I never want to sink my toes in. So because I'm
Well,
not
good
the
for
arbiter
you.
of drag. Thank you,
Yeah, good
thank
for
you.
you. Good for you.
but it's just the right thing to do at the end of the day. And, you know, again, these are all learned growing experiences, but I never want to be someone who says you can or cannot have something. So I think that's ultimately what the mission statement is that DQM is something for everybody, whether you're a client or a customer.
Amazing. Yeah, when I think of DragCon memories, I definitely think of BibleGirl. I also do want to co-sign that you are one of the nicest, warmest, like
Thank you.
just because I mean, people are people and not everybody is, right? And just because you slap on a wig and put on a breastplate doesn't mean that you're going to be the nicest person ever. And no diss to them either. You know what I mean? Like, they got their hustle, they're doing their thing. But I know that every time I would come around the corner and if I could make eye contact with you, I was going to get a smile out of your face. And I would stand in line and I would get the biggest hug. And, you know, you were always part of my DragCon memory highlights, if I'm going to say
and
that.
as are you. And DragCon has it's taken on such an interesting context for me too, outside of business. You know, the business is just intrinsically a part of it, but to be able to have something that up until this year was a consecutive annual, sometimes twice a year scenario where I had the privilege to be able to grow with people and see people who were familiar faces and friends or chosen family or everything under that type of umbrella. That's a very enriching situation for someone like me. As that going back to social butterfly situation, and I feel like you can attest to this, I do my best to like remember names, remember people's stories, remember their parents. And that's something that like is so important to me in drag, because a growing experience for me as a drag queen was having to pull away from the notion that everything is a competition and that you should like it, because it's not. And I know you're totally aware of that as well. And I think it's super hard when you're in it and you feel like you're up against a larger machine, but something like DragCon
and a larger machine that's literally a competition. So how, like, why would you not feel like you're in a competition when you're under the roof of like a home that's giving you a home, and that home is a competition?
Bingo. So to be able to separate myself from that and know that I was going into an environment like that without the pressure of, oh my God, it's audition season, there are going to be eyes on me, because that's on my radar.
You already won every season anyways.
And it's like, you know, oh my God, what if someone has a certain outfit? It's like, it's fine. I dress like a Grand Theft Auto hooker. No one's going to look like me anyway. It's fine.
No,
so
never.
It's like, yeah, always. But the thing was, I was always excited about seeing everybody. And that was the best part. And to be able to have those authentic connections where it's like I can be real with everyone in line and be like, hey, I'm gonna go pee, or hey, I'm gonna go take a smoke break, and everyone just vibes out and everyone makes friends,
like,
and then people come back
go
with
ahead.
new friends. And that's something that I really strive to maintain, is open communication with followers, friends, fan base, whatever you want to call it. And I think, you know, you put out into the world what you want back, right? I feel like that's something that I see a lot through instances like DragCon, for sure.
If there was a DragCon like Miss Congeniality, it would definitely be you and Willem. Like, you, both of you have that same kind of like energy that you're there, you're giving everybody love. You know, like Willem will get out of line to go crouch down to somebody who's, you know, in a wheelchair or who's a little kid. You know, he'll make the bachelorette party wait. You know what I mean? And like, so I just love that. I love that integrity. And it's amazing. Like, I have a bunch of notes in front of me, and yes, the social butterfly, and you've just naturally touched your way on so many of them, and I love that. So going back to this jump of not only going from, you know, employed by somebody else to becoming your own employer, moving from New York to LA, what has been a rose and a thorn of that proceso and that journey?
I'd say, okay, so the immediate analogy that comes to mind is, you know, in The Wizard of Oz, when it's like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. That, I feel like, is the best way to describe my experience in coming up in this industry and having that switch flip. You start to see the guts and like how everything is made.
How the sausage gets made.
Exactly. And so it's not that it turns you off, but it makes you weary, and it makes you very open-eyed. So I think that in and of itself is very much a silver lining, right? You start to be able to parse who's the authentic friendship, who's the nightlife friends, who's the real
Yeah.
friends, and like
Yeah.
because
Because
there
there's
is
a difference.
differentiation.
There's a
Yes,
big difference.
yes, and I think unfortunately, uh, at large as an entertainment industry, I think there's always going to be ulterior motive, no matter what way you go on the compass, and this you really have to keep your people close. So
Yeah.
I think in understanding how to parse and define who your close circle is or are, uh, and how you can trust them, that's been something that has been the rose and the thorn. You have some losses, you take that L based on like the emotional loss of people that you thought were your people, and if they're not, and you don't harbor resentment, you just have to move forward. And then you look on the other side and you go, hey, but wait, there are all these other amazing people that I haven't had to take the L for, that have been there. So like
Yeah.
that's something that it's been definitely tough, because as that social butterfly and as that empath, it's really hard to have to face and accept the fact that there might be rot in something that you thought was a really authentic friendship, you know? And but you have to, it's all about how you frame it. And thank God I went through years of therapy to be able to have this behavioral
Yes.
modification.
And
Because
the
I'm a
language.
full believer. Yeah, yeah. I'm grateful for both therapists that I've had in my life. But all that aside, I think it's been an interesting learning curve, and I'm very grateful for people who have maintained a relationship with me in my life for the right reasons. And it's not to
Yeah.
say like, oh my God, people think I have so much clout and I'm such a cipher for people, because it's not what it is. There's so much nuance and so many layers to it, that I think when people who have ulterior motive come into your life, I think it's bigger than us. So it's just having to take the pause
Yeah.
and just be forward thinking about it.
Yeah. No, and that's a perfect dovetail to I want to touch on, and I think it kind of, you just explained in a way, to me, it makes sense to me why the Free Britney movement would speak so much to you. And I think maybe if you want to dive a little bit more into that, but I think some of those shades of that, kind of like the people with the right intentions, wrong intentions, a sweet innocent soul that just wants to like give the world, their sweet innocent soul, and then along the way, nefarious things happen. And is that why you're such an ambassador for the Free Britney movement?
It's definitely a component. It's 1,000% a component. I'm someone who, growing up, when it came to Britney, I was always just really, the biggest, the big descriptor, or the biggest word that comes to mind viscerally when I think about growing up with her, is liberation. That is something, whether it was sexual liberation, how you are, and liberation of how you're going to live your life from the day to day, anything in that regard. That was something that I always took away from her in many
Mm-hmm.
different avenues of my life. And so, as someone who also, as a diehard fan for her, I also saw those developments of the conservatorship happen in real time, and
Mm-hmm.
understood that it wasn't perfect. It wasn't what it was meant to do, or it wasn't doing what it was meant to do. And so, kind of watching it snowball and become a juggernaut of a monster scenario that it is now, again, larger than us, bigger than us.
Yeah.
Um, I can't help, but I think I'd be pretty remiss in not being a part of the movement, as someone who really watched it manifest over the course of
Yeah.
12 years. And I think, to the point that you brought up about someone really kind of having being taken advantage of, or letting the wrong people in, that's definitely a relatability factor. And I think in a contemporaneous aspect in my life, I think in previous years in my life, I think that's something that definitely bears repeating. And it's a life lesson that is never easy to learn, and it's something that takes a lot of falling down to really kind of get there. And
Yeah.
I think even beyond that, I just always go back to the fact that this is someone who, at the end of the day, you take away all context, wealthy white woman who this has happened to, it can happen to
Yeah.
and I think that's something that we have to really
Oh, and
like
it is
look at.
happening to all kinds of people in all kinds of ways. With
Exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and I think in a timing scenario, better late than never. But I think the fact that the movement has been able to pick up, it's not the movement's fault. I think it's the fact that we've also had to deal with the component of why we're here in this movement. It's because of just fully institutionalized misogyny, patriarchy bullshit in general. And I mean, we've seen a contemporaneous teardown of a public figure like
Yeah.
Britney Spears, who has truly been stoned to the point of where she is now. And it's now she, for whatever reason, is pardon my biblical reference, but it's like she's nailed to the cross, and for what?
Yeah.
Like she like I know how I've acted out, and to think that she was literally like, I just turned 27 and all that shit that was going down was happening to her at my age right now.
Yeah.
And I think of the stuff that I do in retaliation, or when I act out, or when I need to kind of recalibrate. And I think I'd probably fit the bill too if I were in her position. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
it does.
like,
You did touch on something about the patriarchy, because we are it's within my mother's generation that women could not have their own bank accounts, could not have their own credit cards, could still just be sent away for histrionics just because they were hysterical, just because they were emotional. You know, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, R.I. motherfucking peace, because thanks to her, I live in this apartment by myself. I have multiple credit card accounts that I pay off all by myself. You know what I mean? You know, like, et cetera, et cetera. And it is, there's very much shades of that in the underlyings of, you know, some of these people that are, you know, making the rulings. There's some of that, you know, toxicity underlying there too, unfortunately. It's so sad. Well, to wrap up this topic, I posted on social medias that I was going to have the beautiful, amazing Bible on the show. And Jake Beyonce, dear friend of the pod, yes, icon, who will be on the podcast. He will be the Christmas week special. Thoughts on swimming in the stars and matches?
It's a very interesting point of conflict as a person within the Free Britney movement, right? I think both songs sonically are really strong. I think from a business standpoint, I can't support, because it's something that is fueling her father's legal train. And I know it's all up for debate, and there's two very divided camps of, you can support, it doesn't matter, or you shouldn't, you should be boycotting and not cross the picket line. I'm of the mindset of, I'm not crossing the picket line, but I'm also not going to police other people's actions, because if they feel that this is their form of supporting Britney, then what can I do? You know, if I can do my part, then great. The songs are great. Don't get me wrong. The problem is that they do have, I catch myself if I'm listening to the riffs that I have of them, I go back to, these do have a bit of a dark aura to them, because like, they're like, it's very obvious what's going on here. Like, Swimming in the Stars got announced the day after it went public that Britney's dad referred to her as a workhorse or a racehorse or whatever the was. So it's like really hard to justify supporting something that's like, to me, feels like a distraction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
Glory. I think Glory is one of her strongest albums. I think it's such a forward-thinking pop piece and body of work that you can tell she had a lot of creative control in. That's also why I feel very sorry to kind of backtrack a little bit. I feel such a direct connection with her, because she is a weirdo, and I think weirdo. I use it so benevolently, and I think Glory is a great display of her kookiness. You have songs like Private Show, or you have stuff where she creates characters and motifs like Just Like Me, about where she walks into her man having sex with someone who looks like her. Like, it's just like, she is so bonkers and so off the wall. Or If I'm Dancing is really strange, singing about chakras. Like, I could go on. I think Glory is a great blueprint to understanding the intricacies and the silliness that is Britney, that I think a lot of people glaze over because of their misogynistic tendencies. Oh, that's crazy, Britney. Oh, didn't she shave her head?
Was that the album that has the one that has the two videos, that has like the one unreleased version, the Lau Chappelle? Yes. No, and
that original video. Amazing.
No, and when you say, you know, weirdo, misfits, I mean, those are terms of endearment for me. You know, this is radio misfit, this is radio weirdo. You know, I am just like here orchestrating and letting out the voices of the amazing weirdos and misfits, because if it wasn't for y'all, I would definitely feel very lost in this world.
Same to you, sister. It's us that gotta stick together. Misfits for life, baby.
Yes. Well, we have reached the end of the Barbara Walters portion of the show. And now we enter the Andy Cohen portion of the show. And this one I had so much fun putting together. So whenever I can, and if I know the guest well enough, I try to super tailor one of my games to them. So for my Dear Bible, I have Go to Bed Wig, but iconic meme edition.
Okay. I love it.
So
I love it.
I've pulled and I literally to quote the article where I pulled these iconic memes from, or one of them. Memes are cultural symbols and social ideas that spread virally, primarily with the intent to make people laugh. So Go to Bed Wig. We either tell them to go to bed wig, as in like they shouldn't hang out, or they can come to the party, or whatever version you want to make of that.
Okay.
So first, Go to Bed Wig, iconic meme edition. Kermit sipping tea, but that's none of my business.
Go to bed.
Go to Bed Wig.
Quit drag wig.
How do we feel about Grumpy Cat?
She can hang. I like Grumpy Cat. I like her. She makes me laugh.
This was a deep cut that I had not thought of it until I went through this list, and I had to do it. And I'm gonna even have to. What does the fox say? Ding 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 ding. Ring 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 ring.
I've seen them live, and I'll say go to bed.
How do we feel about a good old classic Rickroll?
I love it. 2008 tees down. She can hang. Rick can hang.
How do we feel about Woman Gangnam Style? Oh.
I like Psy. We can keep Psy. So side note, I saw Madonna on the MDNA tour, and she brought him out as a surprise, and was right as Gangnam Style was like a thing. I gagged.
I love it. How do we feel about a good old classic Lolcats?
Oh, I mean, that's as classic as it comes. We have to keep them. They have to stay.
And on that vein, how do we feel about Armageddon?
Oh, again, total classic. Like, we're talking like photo bucket meme. She can say 1,000%. Yay! I love that.
How do we feel about It's a Double Rainbow?
Ooh, I'm kind of on the fence with this one.
Maybe one rainbow can say.
Yeah. One needs her beauty rights. Yeah.
How do we feel about good old classic Dancing Baby?
Oh my God. I used to have like the mouse pads. They can stay. 90s, bitch. I remember.
And how do we feel about Dramatic Chipmunk?
Always a staple. I'll feed her anything she wants.
And how do we feel about Keyboard Cat?
I've been too nice to the cats. She can go. Go to bed, cat.
How about This is the Future Liberals Want? This.
Oh, I want that future. This future can stay.
Classic 2020 meme, the distracted boyfriend. How do we feel about that? How do we feel about distracted boyfriend and all the iterations?
I love it. It's there's one for everybody, and I think that's what's great. I love an applicable, accessible meme.
And then the last one, December 2020. It's still, where's the hat? I wish I had a hat. This is fine.
Oh my God. I wish I had it with me. I just got the Funko for him. He can stay. I love him.
There's a Funko? Okay, I need to get that.
You have to get it. You have to. It's so cute.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, that is Go to Bed Wig Iconic Meme Edition.
I love it. Yeah!
Well, to wrap up the Andy Cohen portion of the show, we're going to ask Bible our speed round questions. Same questions, different performer. We love to hear it. How does Bible start their day?
Coffee and a joint.
Ooh, my kind of girl. Favorite thing about the place you live in?
Koreatown.
Oh, when you do leave the house, which we know because of 2020 is not often, but when you do, what's something you never leave the house without?
A fanny pack.
Oh, the zombie apocalypse is coming, even though it might already be here. Who are the 3 people you want on your survival squad?
Okay, Chris, my partner, for sure. That's a good question. Kylie Minogue. And
I mean, you got to have good music during the apocalypse.
I know, I need to be uplifted. And Khalees.
Nice. I love it. Yes, I love it. What is one important life skill everyone should have?
Communication.
What is a guilty pleasure of Bible's?
Eating a lot of yogurt.
One word friends would use to describe you.
Goofy.
Why did that one come straight to my mind? What is your favorite emoji?
Oh wow. I think it's a toss up right now. It's tied between the singular slice of cake or the fairy.
I love the fairy. And last but not least, what would you like to be known / remembered for?
Being nice. Yeah. And just doing good by people. That's definitely what I want to be remembered for. Less self-serving, but definitely more for like the fact that I did something for someone other than myself.
Well, I think you're nice, and whenever I think of Bible, I think nice. I mean, I do think fried memes, but I think very nice person behind the fried memes.
Yeah, there's a lot of chaos going up in here.
Oh my gosh, you made it to the end of the
Mimi,
ride.
thank you. This was very fun. You're a fabulous interviewer. Thank you so much for having me.
Where can the children, the parents, the puppies, the kitties, even the bearded dragons, where can they find you on social media?
Everybody can find me on social media on Instagram at BibleGirl666, all one word, spelled as it sounds. And Twitter is BibleGirl222, same situation. And I've been uploading in this digital landscape of drag amidst pandemic, all digital drag content to my Patreon, which is patreon.com/BibleGirl. Thank you
I'm
so much,
MeMeCherry.
Mimi.
You're listening to Series of Fortune Events. I have a spin-off podcast with my other co-host, Maddie Rants. Look it up on YouTube. It's called Fortunate Rants. I have a baby YouTube channel. It's a baby rant. Please go subscribe to it. I want to make partner in 2021, and that's how you can help me. Thank you, Bible. This is a dream come true.
Mimi.
I'm hugging
Always
you
a
right
fantasy.
now. I'm hugging
I'll
you
do
so
it.
hard.
Anything you ever want, let me know. I got you, okay?
Well, next year, once this merch of mine that I'm trying to get going spins up, we're talking.
Hey, you know I'm always here for you. Thank you always, Mimi.
I love you, Bible.
Such a pleasure. All
And
my
this
love.
is when
Stay safe.
we say goodbye, adieu, bye.
MeMeCherry.